All right. So it is CheapGearGuy here. It's been a while since I did a review, and I figured I would start it out right with a brand new bit of gear that I got, the Genesis 3 from DigiTech. It was actually made in 2001. I needed something for my studio that, although it is old, I needed something that integrated a little bit better with my studio. And the reason why it integrates better is that it's got a digital output. The digital out is SODIF. And although it is at 44.1 kilohertz, which is still CD quality and still very awesome, it's 24-bit, which is amazing for its age. And so it's still really good. I'm recording in 24-bit, so I'm actually recording 24-bit 96 kilohertz, but it doesn't really affect the sound at all. The reason that I wanted this setup that I've got now is because no matter, I use virtual amps and I use virtual gear. I use these amp sims like the V-Amp 3, the Line 6 pod that I reviewed. This is another one that it has 16 amps and 16 speaker cabinets. What sets it apart is that you can, I'll take a look at it real quick. That button right there, that button right there allows you to warp either just the amps, or you can warp just the speaker cabinets, or you can warp speaker cabinets and the amps. And by warping, you can say you like the Marshall sound, and you also like the rectifier sound, and you want to mesh the two so that you get a brand new amp sound that no one's ever heard of before. You can actually do that, and it turns out you can get some really, really awesome effects. It comes with an editor, the Gen editor, which I will demonstrate that for you also. Today we are using the Equinox Concord. I can't really tell if that's coming through very well, but I've done a review of the Equinox Concord before. It's a beautiful, beautiful guitar. It's got tremendous amounts of sustain. It's got a really great sound, and so I figured it'd be the perfect guitar for this review. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the review a bit. I'm going to be doing all the output that you're going to hear. It's going to be doing, it's not coming out of the actual outputs. It's coming out of the digital output to show you how good that sounds. And then later on, I will show you how I do it with the setup, so that way. The reason I did it was because no matter what I get, Line 6's pod, or I also have Amplitube 3, I'm at their mercy. Whatever amps they come up with is what I'm stuck with. I can't do anything other than that. And eventually I'm going to get tired of those and bored with those. I'll have used them. Pardon me. I'm writing constantly. I'm writing new songs, and sometimes their amps don't fit, or they're not quite right. Or I just sometimes wish I had more amps. Well, with this thing, until I run out of imagination, I can warp amps together. I can warp an orange with a Marshall. I can warp a rectifier with a clean amp like a Fender. I can, for like a really clear but aggressively distorted sound. You know what I mean? Or I can turn the gain down and get like a really gritty but clear sound. And then you can save those as hypermodels. And then you can even take two hypermodels and warp those hypermodels. So I will never, ever, 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 ever run out of amp heads. And what I will do is I'll just set it to warp just the amp heads, and then I'll turn the speaker cabinet to direct so that there's no speaker cabinets on there. Run that out of the direct and into my DAW, and then I'll use my speaker sims through either Amplitube or through Line 6's pod farm, and then it'll give it that real speaker sim sound, and it's just going to be amazing. And like I said, I never run out of those. And should it come to a point where I'm tired of hearing those speaker sims, I can warp the speakers on here, and I can record a dry track as well as the digital output of I'm going to record the dry track regardless, so I can always use my pod farm, but then I can also record just the amp coming out of the digital output. So as you can see, I'm going to have limitless possibilities as far as the sounds that are going to be coming out of my band Geardma, but I've also got a new band. It's called Troth, and it's got Joseph Brocklehurst. You may have seen some of my videos before with Mike Nova in Canada. It's going to have guest appearances from my brother out in California, and I'm going to be playing drums and doing some vocal work, maybe a little bit of lead here and there, but mostly just rhythm guitar and stuff. I'm drifting now, so let's get into the review. Set this up so you can see very well. Oh, by the way, it has MIDI controllability, and I have it already wired up to work with my Behringer FCB 1010, and so all the major function like wah, pitch shift, compression, turning on delay, reverb, and modulation effects, and something else. There's several things I've got controlled, including adjusting the amount of reverb. It goes from like 30% to 80%, and same with delay. So if the delay is kind of quiet, let me give you an example. You see, it's there now. Now it's more pronounced. So. Now it's off. It's really cool, and you can see my hands never touched it, so obviously running with the FCB 1010. And for some reason it works a lot smoother with the FCB 1010. There's that stomp box problem with the FCB 1010 on most other things, and it doesn't really have that problem. So if you're looking for a quick, fast, and non-talky version of a review, this is not the one. I like to talk about music, and I'm going to be talking a lot as well as playing a lot. All right, so let's get into a little bit of what it can do. As you probably are seeing, there's a red light and a green light. Those are the two amps that are currently being warped. So let's take a look at what's actually being warped here. I don't even know, to be completely honest. Right now we've got a rectifier and a modern gain. So I think that's a Soldano. And then the amps, the speaker cabinets are a vintage 412 and a Fane 412. I'm not sure what that is, the Fane 412. I could look that up, but I don't feel like doing that. Right now, like I said, I'm less concerned about what each little thing means and what they actually, what it's supposed to be, and I'm more concerned of what it sounds like. What does it sound like, and what can I use it for? And so let's get into a little bit of that, what it does. So the way that you get to like each channel is the warp button in the middle. As you can see, now we're into the green amp, and the silencer noise gate just completely kicked in. We're at the green amp, and we can adjust that to whatever we want. Now, let me show you something really beautiful about this thing. It has got, I'm going to switch into my neck pickup for this. It's got an acoustic simulator. Remember, this thing was made in 2001. So it does a pretty good, fairly good convincing job of making it sound like you've got an acoustic electric hooked up. And like I said, for 2001, it's good. So I need to tune this thing. Let's get in the tuner. Better. Yeah, I intonated myself, so I could have done a better job. I probably should actually, and it's been a long time since intonated. I should probably go ahead and intonate it, but I'm lazy. It also has a emulator, so if you have a single coil, it can emulate your single coil to sound like a humbucker. If you have a humbucker, it can make it emulate to sound like a single coil. And if you have a humbucker, you can use it to emulate a humbucker, so it humbucks your humbucker. And if you have a single coil, it can single coil your single coil, and it gives it just some new effects to your guitar, makes your guitar sound like not your guitar. It's interesting, you know what I mean? Just give you some new effects. And I think I actually have that programmed into one of the pedals. Let me see. This is normal. And that was affected, so. All right. But just goes to show you, you know, it does little tweaks and stuff that make it a little bit interesting. So, and this was all, again, made in 2001. Also, it has a lot of DigiTech's proprietary effects, like the ya-ya, the auto-ya, the... It's just got a bunch of really cool effects into it, and I'll get into that later when I show you the actual Gen editor. So that was really cool. But let's show you how it warps. So we'll stick with clean. So we got the acoustic sound. Now let's go to a red channel. And we'll pick the black face, which is, of course, the Fender. Okay. I'm not really a big fan of that, so let's go with the 410. Okay, so we got the acoustic, and then we've got the 410 on the blackface Fender, and now we're going to warp it. I definitely need to engineer this thing. Anyways. So that clean sounds really, really clean and really beautiful. So I really dig that. And That'd be great for, I do have that song, Soft as Sunlight, and I usually use like an acoustic. So now it's got the acoustic, and it's also got the 410, and then I use that humbucker to single coil, so I could use the Concord, and it's like having coil taps, you know what I mean? I can just tap that, I could tap that, yeah, I could tap that humbucker, and soft sunlight, oh baby, I know what you've been dreaming on. Once again, you're wanting someone new and take you on. I think it's time you figured out, and I can say without a doubt there's worse things that you could be than alone. Go, you know, follow. Oh, wherever you go, you know I'll follow you. No, I'll follow you. What happened is I switched between the neck pickup and the bridge pickup, and the bridge pickup wasn't turned on, and so it went dead. And the great thing is, being a digital signal coming out of that SODIF, is you lose zero audio quality. I don't know if you guys have had that problem when you're recording. You go to record your amp or whatever, and whatever you have set up, it doesn't quite sound the same because of the sampling rate or whatever. It loses some quality. Well, that doesn't happen when you're using SODIF, when you're using a digital output, because it's basically the computer in the computer brain of the Amp Simulator, the Genesis, talking to the computer in your audio interface, which talks to your computer, and it's all digital information. So there is zero. I mean, you hear it. There's zero. And what I'm hearing in my headphones is exactly what you hear when I mix this out to give to you and put it on the internet or wherever I do with it. It sounds exactly the same. And the best thing is the price. I paid $59 for this thing because it's old. And nobody wants it because it's old. And it's awesome. So go ahead and charge me $59 plus like $6 shipping. The awesomest thing is that it was in Farwell, Michigan, and I'm in Kingsley, Michigan. And that's about an hour and 11 minutes away. So I could have driven down and picked it up if my car wasn't such a gas guzzler, but it is. So I decided just to wait that day it took to get here. Well, it took a little bit longer because for some reason they decided to ship it to Detroit first. All right, so we've done clean. Now let's try, let's do a little bit of vintage amp distortion type stuff. Brit combo. That sounds a little bit better. I like that T12 better. Not the best in the world, but we're getting there. Now let's try the green. That sounds pretty good. Run it through an American T12. Go ahead and warp it and see what happens. Good thing is, that's a little bit too much of the red channel. So let's bring in a bit more of the green. Now in the Gen Editor you have much more control of how much you can affect the balance between the green and the red channel. and I'll show you that later. Now you got just all green. Now it's all red. That's better. Alright, so that's that. Now let's see if we can go ahead and keep recording and still be able to pull up the Gen Edit. If not, I may have to put you on hold while I do that. There's the Gen Editor right there. Alright. Is it going to be able to sync? I think we have our answer by the fact that it did sync. So I wish I could put you guys dead front and center so you could see everything crystal clear, but that's a bit harder to do. Let's go to the effects. Okay, as soon as we go to the effects, the silencer kicked in. We need to adjust that threshold so it's a little bit higher up. But as you can see right here, you got your humbucker single coil to humbucker. It's on off right now. You got your crybaby, your boutique, or your full. Let's go ahead and set that at boutique and turn that on. And as you can see, you can set the minimum and max range. So if it's going too high for you, it's like too aggressive on the high end, or it's going too low, you can adjust that out of there right here without having to go into your FCB and adjust that there. And that's pretty cool. And then you got the full range, which has got a much wider level. for that one. We'll go for cry. Alright, so we'll go with the compressor. You already know what a compressor does and you know what a compressor is and does. And I can I forgot to show you that I can turn on the whammy, the IPS, Intelligent Pitch Shifter, from the pedal. But it's got, you know, Intelligent Pitch Shift has got everything from, you can set the key that you're playing in, major, minor, Dorian, Mixolydian, harmonic minor, all that stuff. And you can go octave down, seventh down, sixth, fifth, fourth, third, all the way to an octave up, which would be... The cool thing is that you can adjust the IPS. It can be a whammy, like a whammy pedal, which I think DigiTech made. It can be, and that can be controlled by the foot pedal. It can be intelligent pitch shift. It can be a detune, like the whammy also does, or it can be just a pitch, so you can just adjust your... Cool. So I prefer the intelligent pitch shift, and then I prefer to be an octave down. It just gives it a gritty sound, and it's got the... Yeah, so... And then it's got a lot of modulation effects, flanger, phaser. Cool thing is that you can adjust the sine wave, triangle or square, the balance, the mix. The balance is cool because you can adjust it to be over here on the... You can adjust it to be over on the left. You can adjust how much of the mix. And the balance is one of those things that you can adjust on the pedal. So if you wanted to have a setup where you were adjusting the pedal, so on top of phasing, you're also balancing it going. Doing that with the pedal would be really cool. But that's one of those things that I haven't set up yet, so I can't really show you. But it would be really cool. And then it's got triggered flanger, which, if you don't know, it triggers from when you pick. So it's like... As you can see, every time I pick, it restarts the flange. Same with the phaser. So, yeah, cool. And tremolo, panner, vibrato, rotary speaker. Alright, so we got that. Auto yaw. I really like that effect because it sounds like a talk box, but if you put it on the yaw-yaw, you can actually control the yaw-yaw like a wah-wah. One of those things you gotta control, you gotta program to the pedal. Haven't done it yet. But I'm going to because I really like the yaw-yaw pedal, the yaw-yaw effects. The synth talk is another one. Let's see. Envelope. Kind of like a chorus. Alright. And the last one is pitch. why they have a pitch here as well as a pitch up there. I don't know. They must have been going for something like, in case you want to go really kind of crazy with it, like Tom Morello, is that his name? Audio Slave, Rage Against the Machine. Tom something or another. Anyways, but yeah, you can get really nutty with it. Then you got your Ping-Pong Delay, analog pong, and spread. So you can do... reverbs. You got a bunch of reverbs, whole bunch of reverbs there. Studio, room, club, plate, hall, amphitheater, church, garage, spring. Now you got your expression pedals, and there you go. You can do your warp, expression pedal 1, and this is for if you have the actual, they have an X-Link expression pedal, and it's a special pedal for the this specific model amp sim, but I don't have it, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect me in the least. Now the cool thing about this is, as you can see right here, is that the bass frequency, you can adjust exactly the bass frequency you want to pump up. You got the gain, you got your bass level, you got your mid frequency level, and you got your treble frequency level. And so you can get really, really specific. Now the cool thing also is you can get into cab tuning. What cab tuning is it adjusts the actual, well, if it emulates the size of the cabinet. So if you wanted your 412 to actually have like a bigger cabinet than a 412 normally would, you can tell it has a huge difference. It has a dramatic effect on the sound. And as I said, you can adjust the warp way more. Me personally, I like to set my mid frequency at 3000 K and my high frequency at 5000 K. Now technically that would both be high. And I would agree with you, those would both be high, but the cool thing is that it gives it the cool thing is when you're trying to EQ, and I've learned this recently, when you're trying to EQ, the best thing to do is to give your guitar, to get it to stand out, a boost around 3000 K and 5000 K. So if you go ahead and do that here, you don't need to do so much of it in the, oh, that's why I wasn't doing it there, 5 and then 7. So yeah, maybe that's a little too much, but you get the idea. And this thing is just freaking amazing. And let me see if I can go ahead and do this. Pull up this. Now, I don't think it's going to let me do it in real time right now because I think it's actually recording. So why don't I give you guys a quick little pause and then we'll come back to this, all right? All right. Okay, so we are back now, and what we're going to do is show you how the you can warp the heads and use them through the actual amp sims. As you can see here, I've got Pod Farm pulled up, and I turn off the head here, and we've just got the speaker cabinet. Right now, it is a 412 green with 20s in it, so it gives it that vintage kind of sound to it. Which we were kind of building up a vintage type vibed amp head, and so now we're going to go ahead and try it out with this new vintage head with vintage amp sim speaker sim. We're getting a bit of clipping on that. I think I need to turn that down. All right, well, when I mix it back, you won't see any of that. That's the great thing is that, like, while I'm playing this, I don't think it's actually recording my movements. I'll make sure that it's not clipping when you watch it back at all. So it's just a matter of watching it. Anyways, and we back. Hey, I've been in the bridge position. Let's go in, I mean the neck. Let's go in the bridge. is very late. I'm probably disturbing my wife from sleeping. I've shown you just about everything that this thing can do. I've shown you the editor. I've shown you how this thing can be warped. I've shown you how it can be added to the current new amps, and make new amps and add it to amp sim programs. I think I've done a fairly thorough job of reviewing this thing. We're going on a long review. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you've learned a few things along the way. One, since this thing was made in 2001, age ain't nothing but a number, because this thing sounds awesome. Two, I am thoroughly insane, and I will figure out nutsy ways of saving money and still coming out with a pretty badass sound and digital effects and all that stuff. I can figure out some crazy ways of making stuff happen where there was none. Anything else to learn from this? Don't let little things like stop you from doing things like, money and things like that tend to get in the way of doing a lot of things that you want to do. And if you put your mind to it, you can figure out really cool ways to do stuff that probably no one's ever done before. And that doesn't make it bad. And these amps, they may not sound like the actual amps, like the British combo may not really sound exactly like the JCM, whatever, JMP that it's supposed to sound like. I don't care. I'm not going for that sound. That means zero to me. Because I'm not trying to sound like that. I'm trying to sound like me. And this thing does perfect for that. And combined with these speaker sims, combined with the digital out, combined with the warp factor, I can sound like anything in the world. Like when I come up with a sound in my head, I can make that happen now. And it sounds pretty real. To me anyways. It sounds pretty stinking real, because those amps, the speakers are actually mic'd real speakers. They're speaker simulators of real speakers in real studios. You know what I mean? So it sounds pretty damn real. You're going to have to use your imagination a little bit, especially if you're on a tight budget. But just think about the problem and figure out a way to solve it within your budgetary means. And you can do it. If you're even still watching this part, you're probably given up by now. This is a long review. But if you're still watching, thank you for tuning in this long. This studio is the hottest room in this house. I have no idea why. I've closed off all the vents. I have a window open and I'm still sweating. It is so hot in here. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I hope you enjoyed the review. I hope you like the DigiTech Genesis 3. If you are interested in it, it's discontinued, so you're going to have to go on eBay, or you're going to have to look on like Craigslist or something like that. Actually, I saw several of them on eBay. Going for the next cheapest one that I saw was $69, and I saw one for $89. I saw one for like $109. Hell, maybe this video will cause a resurgence in people wanting them, but who knows? I don't know. Yeah, use your imagination, come up with new ways to do stuff, and do it for cheap. If you don't have let's say you don't have a speaker simulator, like you don't have Amplitube, There are free versions of PV Revolver 4, that has a free version. Amplitube has a free version. You get 2 clean amps and 2 Marshall amps. Guitar Rig 3, Guitar Rig 5 has a free version that has a Marshall and a Fender. And of course, it has speaker simulators for that. There is also Line 6 Pod has a free version, and that has a Marshall and a Fender. They love giving away a Marshall and a Fender. I don't know why. Even the PV version has their version of a Marshall and their version of a Fender because it's PV, so they're doing like a lot of PV amps. So those have actual, speaker simulators. So you could still do something like this, even if you don't have the DigiTech. Like, say you have an amp head, like you have your amp head, but you don't have any good speakers. You could still use these free versions, run the line out of your amp head, and still get a good speaker sound, as you heard there. So, yeah, you just have to use your brain and think about stuff. And like I said, I hope you learned how crazy I am, and I'm a mad scientist when it comes to this stuff. And with that, I think I'm going to call it a night because I can feel the insanity taking over the brain. So thank you for watching, CheapGearGuy. I'm out of here.